that this virgin warrior changed the course of European history in her two breathtaking public years as a military and spiritual figure before she was burned at the stake as a heretic at the age of 19. So this course then tells the story of four prominent medieval women who still shimmer in the modern imagination. Our cast of characters, I should start by saying, is small and in no way representative. Extraordinary people never are representative. Nevertheless, this study allows us to ask some fundamental questions about how medieval women were perceived in their own time and in our time. Seeing the ways that these women have been understood and misunderstood, but never ignored, helps us to understand how history passes judgment both on women and on the Middle Ages. What has happened to make these women particularly visible to us now? Surely one of the defining cultural and scholarly questions of our own day, certainly of my lifetime, in addition to the question of race, is the question of gender. 50 years ago, intellectuals were entirely comfortable using the term mankind, man, to define all humankind. Since the late 1960s, however, thinkers from all political positions in the whole Western world have become aware that our official histories, almost always in the past, ignored women. Researchers from disciplines as various as literary criticism and medical research have become conscious of the differences between biological sex, all of those biological elements that distinguish male from female, and culture-driven gender, all of the values and social roles attached to how men and women perform their sexual differences in history and in culture, and of course quite differently in different moments in culture. Researchers in all fields also know now that there is no simple line of demarcation. Where does sex stop and gender begin? This question, to which we do not yet have an answer, has implications for almost all fields of human thought. But in history, at least, it has spawned new fields of women's history. Using the time-honored tools and techniques of historical investigation, historians and cultural analysts, male and female alike, have been combing the sources and archives to find what they can discover about women of the distant past. The first thing we discovered, not surprisingly, is that most of our stories about women were written by men. As Chaucer's wife of Bath said, when the wife of Bath asked this very question of her audience, "Who painted the lion? Tell me who." The assumption is that men wrote the stories about men and women, and very often men were the subjects of those stories, and women their objects and even sometimes their victims. Women were written about rather than those doing the writing. Quite surprisingly, however, in the last generation, we have discovered or rediscovered lots of materials written by women. Heloise and Hildegard, whom we're studying in this course, are among those rarest women, those who have left substantial written records that let us trace their lives and leanings and learning. The unique trial records, not one, but two sets of trial records of Joan of Arc, continue to fascinate historians and readers. These are records that have been recuperated in by modern scholarship. Scholars used to say that all women in the Middle Ages were identified either with Eve, the temptress, or with the Virgin Mary. We now know that this is a distorting oversimplification. Our women in this course alone are proof that women were perceived in many different ways in their own day. The four women we're talking about in this course are significant in part because they were so visible in their own time, remarkably visible among the women of their time. With our four women, we can move beyond the tissues of expectation or prejudice that we tend to have either coming to the subject or that the subject has forced upon the women under investigation, and find from the record itself what these women had to say or what was said about them in their own time. We can move beyond our expectation of how women ought to be to real